Okay, let's welcome back. This is basically a part two to the lecture we just finished a moment ago. We ended up with Bernini. Uh, it just so happens my computer ran out of power right where the perfect place it would have split up. So that's perfectly fine. So those of you that we're dealing with this quiz, the Bernini and the Tintoretto and the La Greca are on the same quiz, even though there's two videos that go along with it. You just take a little break and we can just watch the one on Bernini now. Now, Bernini, like I said, is just a spectacular artist, just an incredible body of work and just an incredible amount of skill. He's director of a large studio with a lot of employees, and they're going to do a lot of incredible work. Like Michelangelo, Bernini was extremely talented as a young artist. A lot of times when I talk about artwork, I tell you the year that they did it. But when I talk about individual artists, sometimes I like to just kind of talk about how old they were when they did things. So here we have Bernini, and this piece right here is called Fawn Teased by Children. So here you have the spawn who's being teased. So you can see the size of this. It's a very large, decent sized piece. And it's a marble carving, marble sculpture. And he did this when he was 18 and 19 years old. If you think about the Michelangelo pieces we talked about, those are some flat reliefs that he cut, the Madonna of the Stairs and the Centaurs. Uh, and then he went to, when he was 21, 22, 24 years old, he did the Pieta, that's the St. Peter's Pieta. So Michelangelo accelerated in his late teens and just did an incredible amount of work. But Bernini, at the 18, 19 years old, he's doing this pretty incredible piece also. Also, when he's 19, he's going to do the martyrdom of St. Lawrence. St. Lawrence was martyred by actually being cooked to death. He was put on a skewer here, and the flames are there, and he's tied down, and he's being killed this way by being cooked to death. It's really kind of interesting that Saint Lawrence is the saint for chefs and cooks, and he was actually cooked, not to be killed. But it's kind of an interesting situation with that. So this one he's also going to do when he's 19 years old. He is going to I'm going to jump forward a little bit. He's going to do this one for quite a few years. This is St. Peter's altar when he's about 25 to 36 years old. So he spent 11 years building this. This is over 100 feet. It's like 100 feet tall. And it's a bronze sculpture cast and welded together. And it's an absolutely stunning piece. We talked about St. Peter's before, where these hallways are 200 feet tall. It's underneath the dome that's over 500 foot tall. And as massive this building is, it kind of dwarfs this huge altar right here. So the altar has to be big to compete with the enormity of St. Peter's Basilica. And this is kind of a detail where you see the hallway up here, but this is a beautiful uh, uh, swirling altar pieces coming down right here. Absolutely beautiful piece in St. Peter's Basilica. And when you walk into St. Peter's Basilica, you walk in the front door, you look to the right and you see Michelangelo's first Pieta, it was Mary Magdalene, the Dead Christ. And then you look forward and you see this piece. It's forward. It seems like it's about a 3 mile walk to get to it. It's so big, but yeah, it's there. And then when you walk in St. Peter's, this is on top of the dome of St. Peter's, and you're looking down at the colonnade in the front, and these little specks down here are people, uh, and this colonnade right here, as it goes all the way around. These sculptures right here are about 20 feet tall. Some of these are like, I think, 25 feet tall. So they're large marble sculptures done by Bernini. These are all done by his studio, and he does all this work. So Bernini becomes kind of the interior decorators of St. Peter's, and these are some incredible sculptures. Uh, this is the colonnade right here. Like if you were standing like right here and looking right here, looking that way, that's what you see right here. And you can see people sitting over here, little tiny people over here, little people right there. You can see how tall this is. And if this is 20, 25 feet tall, these are a massive colonnade. And the arms that go out for St. Peter's uh, the courtyard in front of St. Peter's Basilica. And this is one of the sculptures. So you see they're quite detailed and they're quite nice, and each of them are done this well. Here's an angel. Okay, now when Bernini is 21 years old, he is a little adventurous. Well, he's adventurous in a lot of different ways most of his life, but here's a situation where he did a blessed soul, and he did a sculpture, a bust. A bust is a head and shoulders. So he did a bust of a blessed soul, and he did a bust of the damned soul. And this is the damned soul. And what he wanted to do is he wanted to show the feelings and emotions of someone that was damned to hell. So what he did was he got a piece of metal and he put it in the fire and he let it get really hot. And he stood in front of a mirror and he burned his arm with that hot poker. And when he did that, he would scream and yell in pain. And he would look in the mirror at himself screaming and yelling. And then he would draw himself. Then he'd burn himself, scream, and then draw it and draw it and draw it. And then he made the sculpture from the drawings of him screaming from burning himself so severely. With that extreme pain that he had, he was able to draw it and then able to sculpt it. So here you have A Damned Soul by Bernini. Now, this piece right here is Donatello's David. Now, I need to show you a couple things to let you understand what I'm talking about. In the mid-Renaissance, we had Leonardo da Vinci, and he's going to do the Mona Lisa. And we talked about how the Mona Lisa is anatomically correct and how important that is, but I'm not going to get into that right now. But she was anatomically correctly painted. Now, Donatello, who's down the street, is going to paint this David. He's going to sculpt this David in bronze. So this is anatomically correct. So you had Leonardo da Vinci doing painting anatomically correct, and now you had Donatello doing things anatomically correct. And then you have Michelangelo coming along. And Michelangelo comes along and he does his David. You can see how large this is, 16 feet tall. And we talked about this before, but we talked about the head is enlarged and the feet are made small. So when you look at it from that perspective right here, so when you look up at it, the feet don't look huge and the head doesn't look really small at the top. So he's changed that proportion for you so it looks perfect when a human being in the real world looks at David. So he's distorted David, okay? You can really see a nice history between Renaissance work and Baroque work by looking at these three Davids I'm going to show you. The original David by Donatello, not the original, but Donatello's David was anatomically correct. Michelangelo's during the High Renaissance is going to have some distortion. It's very anatomically correct, but it's knocked out of scale because of the view that he does. And then when you look at, again, this is Michelangelo's David, there's no feelings and emotions on this. Okay, the Baroque's going to have the feelings and emotions. And this is Bernini's David. Here you have Bernini's David. Instead of GQ and David just kind of sitting up there, hey, I'm cool. What's happening is you have Bernini's David. He's got his sling. He's turned the sling around his body. He's looking over his shoulder at Goliath coming at him. Goliath's this big guy ready to kill him. And he's got to save the Israelites. So he's got the sling. This is an incredibly stressful moment. He stretches his body, pulls his body back. He gets that sling going, and he slings that stone over, hits Goliath in the head, knocks him out, and then cuts Goliath's head off. But what happens is, this is a really good example of what a Baroque sculpture is going to look like versus a Renaissance sculpture. It's going to have three-dimensional composition. You can walk all the way around this piece, and you can see it from all these different angles right here, and how powerful that sculpture is. He's got feelings and emotions on his face, and he's got implied movement. His body's about to spring forward. So that's the essence of a Baroque sculpture. Implied movement, feelings and emotion, and three-dimensionally composition to it. And if you look at those three Davids, they give you a really good example of from the Renaissance to the Baroque. This one here is Apollo and Daphne. And what happens is this is a Bernini sculpture. This is a large sculpture. I don't remember how tall it is, but it's got to be about 12 feet tall. And the story is that you have Apollo kind of had the hots for Daphne, and she didn't like him. So she acquired this power where when he would get her, capture her, that she would turn into a tree and then he would leave her alone. So right here, right when he's getting her, her legs right here are turning into bark and it's starting to turn into a trunk of a tree. And you'll see up here that her hands are turning into little twigs, little tiny twigs and leaves. And when you get this up close like this is amazing. This is amazing what Bernini does here. If you think about this being hundreds of years ago, you're dealing with 400 years ago nearly. And they don't have power tools, Dremels, and things like that, and saws. These guys are hitting chisels on marble, striking that marble hard, filing it, grinding it down by hand. And here you have this hand coming up and just very gentle little tiny branches going off, these leaves fluttering in the air. How they did that marble, I have no idea. It is just unbelievable how incredible that piece of work is. And that's Daphne. And then here uh, we have Pluto, and and what's happened here is uh, uh, I'm surprised. I thought I'd had this slide out of here. It took me by surprise. So what happens is you have. I didn't have a good photograph of this, but you see his hand. His hand is just going inside this flesh, and it just looks so real. This is in the same museum, small museum, the Borghese Gallery in Rome. Uh, David, Bernini's David, and Daphne, and they're all in the same museum. It's just an incredible museum in Rome to go to. Small, beautiful, beautiful place. But you can see how things are three dimensional. You see how there's movement. You can see how there's feelings and emotions here. Okay, here's this one right here. This is the Blessed Levitica. Uh, and and with this one, it's just part of a tomb, and this is a sculpture he did for a tomb. But here you have uh, this powerful feelings and emotion. I remember in college when I took my Baroque art history class, a graduate level art history class. I remember the face of this piece was on the textbook that we had. It's just a great example of just the amount of emotions and feelings that come out in the Baroque art period, especially with the sculpture. The fabric looks just incredible. It just looks like it's rich and full, and just full of life. It's just a beautiful piece. Okay, this piece right here. Um, when I think about my favorite sculptures of all time, I have two of them. One is in the 20th century. We won't talk about that today, but this is my favorite. Even though I love David, you love the Pieta, you love all these other things, this is my favorite one. It's kind of brings out kind of uh, the rambunctiousness of Bernini. Bernini uh, was kind of a wild guy. The Pope wanted him to settle down, and so so the Pope, I think, got him married to his niece or something. So it was a relative. I think it was his niece or cousin. I think it was the niece, and so the Pope gets Bernini married to calm him down because he was a woman's lady and he was fighting and he would go all around town and all that kind of stuff. So he wanted to let him focus on his artwork a little bit more. So he sets up arranges that marriage. But and he loves his wife and everything. But his wife has an affair with his brother, and he beats his brother up. He chases him, finally catches him, and just beats the living crud out of him and almost kills him. He would have probably if they didn't stop him. So he beats his brother. Then he goes back to his wife and gets a knife and slashes her face. Well, this doesn't make the Pope very happy. So Bernini kind of gets out of sorts with the Pope. Just everything's bad for a while. and there's some other things going on also. But so he's out of favor of the Pope. But the Pope wants him to do this piece. This piece, commissioned by someone else. But this piece is really wanting to be done by the church. It's in a Catholic church in Rome, kind of near the main train station, a little bit out of downtown. It's in a smaller church, not a large cathedral. And when you go up and you see this piece, I know this photograph's not a very good photograph. It's kind of blurry. I got a better one here in a second. But what happens, I want to show you this one because this is the sculpture. This is the altar. When you walk into the church, you go to the Latin cross, you turn left at the center, and you look to the left, and this is an alcove on the left. But when you see this piece, you'll see that the sculpture's here, but then he did a sculpture of people looking at it. And then he does another sculpture over here of people looking at it. So there's a sculpture, and he does sculptures of people looking at his sculpture. Now, this piece, here it is here. Let's see, it's there. Is it here? This piece is called The Ecstasy of St. Teresa. Now, St. Teresa was a nun during the Renaissance. And during the Baroque period, she became, if I remember my history right, she became a saint. And later on, about 100 years after she lived during the Renaissance. So she becomes a saint, but she becomes a saint because of some writings and a vision that she had. And in this vision, she's in her apartment, she's in her room, and her room is filled with light, almost like the room was going to be on fire. It's just a tremendous amount of light. In this vision, an angel appears to her. And when this angel appears to her, she feels her body being lifted up. And her body is lifted up off the ground. And that experience of that angel and her, there are certain elements of the spirit, powerful inspiration of the spirit that happens at this point. And she does a lot of writings on this about the powerfulness of the Spirit of God. That the Spirit of God is so powerful in her, she feels like she's levitated. And these are some beautiful writings, and she's made a saint, I understand, because of those writings and this experience. So she also talks about the experience, and so she's elevated, and the angel is there, and she talks about how the angel pierces her heart with a spear or an arrow, and you can see in the sculpture here there's an arrow there, and because she talks about this arrow, and this arrow pierces her heart, and as it pierces her heart, she has this incredible ecstasy of the Spirit of God. And this is the beautiful thing that the church liked, and she becomes a saint because of it. But here's the problem. Bernini is not happy with the church. He's arrogant, and he sees this ecstasy of St. Teresa. He's looking at ecstasy in a different way. He's looking at it in a possible sexual manner. And and what he does is he changes the sculpture a little bit. Here's the angel, and here's St. Teresa, and here the angel is pulling her habit back a little bit. He's pulling her clothes back a little bit, and he has this arrow right here. And you see the arrow is not pointed toward her heart, like she says. The arrow is pointed toward a little bit lower part of her body, and he's dealing with that kind of ecstasy, spiritual ecstasy, and he's kind of saying how closely tied they are, and how the feelings are, or he's saying that they're the same, or very close to the same. So that doesn't get out for a while, of course, but that's the controversy of this piece. And it's just an absolutely stunning piece. I love the piece so much. I really do. I know you can't see it very well, but even in my home, I do mosaics. And look, there's a mosaic right there. It's about a 4 foot by 4 foot mosaic. And that mosaic is of the face of St. Teresa and the ecstasy of St. Teresa. Anyways, get back down here. So here we have the Ecstasy of St. Teresa. And here we have the guys on the side of the gallery looking at St. Teresa. So what we have is we've been talking a little bit today. So in the first part of this the first part of this little lesson in the other video, we talked about El Greco. We talked about the distortion of El Greco, what caused it with Michelangelo, and him being kicked out of Italy, and he continued to do distortion and continue to do it until it evolved in this incredible feelings and emotion. And you got to realize that when he does that, it's not going to be to the 20th century. And one of the main emphasis of modern art is dealing with subconscious feelings. And we're going to talk about that. We talk about the 20th century art, but the subconscious feelings in art is going to be a main emphasis of modern art. And for 300 years, people are going to think he just wasn't a very good painter. He was an excellent painter. He was just doing things 350 years ahead of his time, or 300 years ahead of his time. So that's El Greco with distortion. We have Bernini brings feelings and emotions to his artwork. We had comparisons with that. And I also talked about the difference between Renaissance sculpture and Baroque sculpture with three-dimensional composition, feelings and emotions, and implied movement. And there's plenty of examples of that. I hope that's good. I appreciate you guys being here, and see you next time.